All right, hi friends. As promised, I thought I would just share a few things that I've figured out just through experience and trial and error and self-education. I definitely do not want to present myself as like an expert on this topic, but I have been doing this for a while, and I have even created one specialty course which is just for pronunciation. I have written one course which I've sold and worked on. So I do have a little on-the-job experience with this and hope it might be, yeah, maybe there will be something helpful for you. I'll try to keep it fast. So my overview for this, I'm going to break this down into three parts. The first part will be laying the foundation. You really need to lay the foundation. Then I'm going to give you some specific exercises. And finally, I'll mention to you just a few things, few exercises you can do for the suprasegmental features. So into laying the foundation, we've kind of talked about this in our class already. But I think that you must start with identifying the pronunciation challenges that are specific to your individual students. So either like specific pronunciation challenges common to the student's first language, or sometimes it could be an individual student. The good news here is that probably you can figure this out through trial and error. Also, Google is your friend. Literally, I just went on Google and put in like um, pronunciation challenges for German speakers learning English, and 10 YouTube videos and 10 blog posts came up. Pronunciation challenges for Farsi speakers learning English, blog posts and YouTube videos come up. Um, I looked for Luxembourgish. Sorry to tell you, Isabella, there was not a lot for Luxembourgish specific pronunciation challenges, but I thought maybe Dutch or German would be relevant to a Luxembourgish speaker. Sorry, I'm a little ignorant, but that seems to be what the closest big language would be to Luxembourgish. So if you Google that, you're gonna find things like this, right? Here's a German specific uh 10 English pronunciation errors by German speakers, right? And you're going to notice right away our IPA is important, right? We've talked about whether or not you teach the IPA to students. I'm not sure it's really necessary, but I think that it's important for teachers to know the IPA, right? Because you need to be able to very specifically identify and label your exact pronunciation errors. So here's the one for Germans. It's got lists of pronunciation errors specific to German speakers, Farsi, um, specific pronunciation challenges. You see, once again, we're using IPA to describe the mistake and the accurate sound. Um, For Luxembourgish, as I said, for Luxembourgish, I ended up looking for Dutch. And once again, you're gonna see here, where was it? This was kind of a long one, but there we go. Right. You see here, once again, we're using the IPA to describe how Dutch speakers make a sound and what the target sound in the proper English language or the proper English pronunciation is. Now, on that note of proper pronunciation, I totally agree with the idea that like basically it's all relative. There's no right or wrong accent. We all have our individual accents. But of course, if you're working towards something, you need something to work towards. In my experience, that's either going to be CNN English, General American, or BBC English, British Received Pronunciation. I have had just a few students trying to learn an Australian accent. I can't do one very well, but I try to teach it to them because they are Chinese students planning on immigrating to Australia. That was silly. Okay, so maybe you might be looking for an Australian or Irish accent if a specific student has that specific target, but generally you're gonna go for like a standard American or standard British. And you're gonna find out, what challenges are specific to your target language, or sometimes students have specific challenges Um, and for example, I've got a 6-year-old boy named Kevin from Shanghai who has this weird problem. Usually Chinese students can say the long vowel sounds very well, A, E, I, O, U, but they have problems with the short vowel sounds, A, E, I, A. They always shift the short vowel sounds to long vowels. But my little Kevin cannot say I. He cannot say rice. He always says race or res or rus. So maybe you will notice with a specific student, they have a specific challenge. And again, you need to be able to describe that using the IPA. So that is why, in my opinion, that's why it's important for teachers, at least, to be able to use the IPA. Because the IPA, this brings us to our second thing, the IPA makes us aware of what specific body parts are moving, right? So what I do then with my students when we're laying the foundations in the beginning of the course, we identify the specific sounds, the very specific sounds they have problems with, and I teach them little cues to know which part of their body should be working. So for my Chinese students that have problems with the short vowel sounds, we practice a lot feeling ah, at, it, ah, right? If you have the common problem of not getting the th sound, we're really going to teach the students to go really exaggerate, stick that tongue out, right? Maybe we're practicing the alveolar flap sound, the little sound, that butter, water, sweater, whatever, caterpillar, that little sound. Um, with my student Kevin, who has the problem with the long I sound, I show him I, and we really feel up inside our nose, I, where that should vibrate. The reason I teach the students like where those body parts are is that so going forward in the class, when they make a mistake, I can just go, right, maybe my student says, she has ride hair. She has ride hair. And I go, and right away the student knows she has red hair. And I've taught her, right? I've taught her this is the cue. Eh, eh. Remember to say not I, right? If the student says, this is a problem, and the student should know, this is a problem, not this is a problem. So I teach those students like specific things to look at, which specific body parts they need to change the movement, and then have cues. It's kind of like the silent way. You remember on the silent way when they had just like those signs on the wall and they would point to the colors for different phonetic sounds? It's something like that. Like I don't try to talk to the students too much, but I try to lay the foundation so that a few weeks later they're still making the same mistake and I can just go, and they should know. They know what I'm talking about, or they know what I'm cueing when I point to that part of my body. Okay. So once that foundation has been laid, here's a few specific exercises. One, probably you know already about it. The most useful one, minimal pairs, right? So finding like words that just change that little sound, right? Tree, three, red, ride, back, bike, this, dis, etc., right? One game I like to play with that is I like to translate a sentence into the student's native language, and then they translate it back and find the minimal pair. So here's an example of what I might do in Chinese. I'll give a student these two sentences, and one means I fit in the shoes, and the other sentence is a bit absurd. It means I feet in the shoes, right? Fit, feet, fit, feet. And the student translates these sentences and sees, oh, here's the minimal pair. And if I change that vowel sound, I'm going to say something really silly. I am feet. What is that? Right? Or here's an example in German, right? We've got two sentences here. One means I am three. The other one means I am tree. Right? So this is a like kind of translation exercise I do to emphasize the minimal pairs and show students how they can make some real significant vocabulary mistakes if they are not paying attention to these specific sounds that they need to work on. Another specific exercise we use a lot is different variations of the really exaggerated accent. And here are three ways you can do that. One is to exaggerate your own bad accent, using that term with a grain of salt, right? Nobody's accent is bad, but if you want to work on it, right? So really, if you have a German accent, say a sentence, right? The big brown fox ran over the lazy dog, and really try to say it with a thick German accent and feel which parts of your vocal tract are working differently when you exaggerate your thick German accent. And that will make you aware of which parts of your vocal tract you want to change as you're correcting your accent, right? Another one, fun way to do it is to take one sentence or a couple sentences and first try to really exaggerate it with a strong USA accent and then with a UK accent. So first, the big brown fox ran over the lazy dog, right? And then the big brown fox ran over the lazy dog, right? And try to like see if you can play games to really push the American accent, push the UK accent. That's a whole thing. I have done that kind of coaching with my advanced students where we list the specific phonetic differences between UK and USA accent and they choose which one they want to focus on and they learn to say like, over or over, right? And they focus on emphasizing that nation specific accent. And then my students loved this, by the way. As you know, I have an American accent, but when I was teaching in Croatia, most of them were going for a British accent, as is standard across a lot of Europe, Central Europe. So what we would do is we would have 5 minutes every class. We'd have 5 minutes of fancy time, we called it. So we'd set a timer. I'd put on a little classical music. We would pretend to walk around with cups of tea. And for that 5 minutes, we all, teacher included, would focus on saying every sentence with a very exaggerated British accent, a proper, posh British accent, and really focus on just that in everything we did for 5 minutes of fancy time. So those are a few ideas where you can like try to exaggerate your bad accent, exaggerate your target accent. That's a useful thing. And then my last specific exercise that I use a lot, I believe in the principle that if you train your ear, you will train your mouth and vice versa. These things are really connected. One experience I've had with this, I mentioned this in a chat box a few weeks ago. I had a student last year who was working with a lot of French clients and she was having a hard time understanding her French clients when they spoke English. So what we did, we went to this great tool, which is the Dialects Archive. I'm so good at pronouncing things. And here at this tool, you can find specific accents from about everywhere in the world. So she was going for French. So we listened to some French accents. And
this recording, France 3, light into many beautiful colors. These take the shape of a long round arc with its path high above and its two.
Anyways, you can listen to that on your own time. But what I had Evshen, that was the student's name, what I had her do was like listen to these dialogue samples from people with French accents, and then she would try to identify what made the French accent unique, and then she would try to speak with a French accent. I actually had her try to speak more with a French accent. And what we found after about 6 weeks is that she had some measurable improvement in her listening comprehension because she trained her mouth. So I really believe that it goes both ways. Train your ear and you'll train your mouth. Train your mouth and you'll train your ear. Finally, just a note about super segmental features. This is a little bit different, and to be honest, this is a bit challenging for me. But a few exercises you can do to focus on super segmental features is to like have a text and then listen to a recording of somebody reading that text and underline the linked words, right? I want to go out and see the waterfall, right? So I want to go out and see the waterfall and have the students underline which words are linked. They might highlight the stressed syllables, right? Waterfall, caterpillar, design, right? Or we might clap the beat of a sentence, right? I want to go out and see the waterfall. The caterpillar will come out in 3 or 4 weeks. The big brown fox ran over the lazy dog, right? And we clap, clap, clap the beat. So those are a few exercises I do for the super segmental features. All right, hope this wasn't too long or silly or a waste of your time, but those are just a few things that I have figured out by trial and error, and I do use those to some success with my students. So maybe you can use them with your students or with yourself. Okay, thanks.